Hi, this is Jen, and thanks for joining me. Today I'm doing the April 2018 card kit with the Spellbinders products, and the card kit the kit that I subscribe to is called Kitschy. It is the card kit plus a small die of the month. Spellbinders has several different types of card kit for every budget, so if you want to check those out, I've gone ahead and left links below. In the kit that I get, it's the card kit plus a small die of the month. So the small die of the month for April is basically a bunch of floral pieces, flowers, and there are many dies in that. And I believe just the small die of the month, or the small die of the month is like $7.99 a month, so it's a really good deal. And then in the card kit portion, there are several paper flowers, several paper sentiments, some florals, some gold pieces, and some sentiments, some scripty words, and some cards, which I don't end up using at all in the projects that I make this month. And then this metal butterfly. And then you've got the ribbon, which comes in every kit. And so there's several sheer pieces and 2 solid pieces. There are 5 total. Double-sided tape, foam squares, and then you got this pretty sparkly flower with the gem in the center. Then you get 10 cards and 10 envelopes, and then some epoxy stickers, and then some sentiment flags with brads, and then 3 butterflies these are layered butterflies. I think there's 3 layers. And then you get some gems and some transparencies. So there are several of those. And I used 2 of the transparencies in my projects today. And then in every card kit, just the card kit portion, you get dies. And so there are several dies in this kit. So you got the flower piece, you got an XO sentiment, a key, a dragonfly, a leaf, and then a butterfly, a small butterfly. And then the paper, I think there are 12 sheets. You've got a pink, a white, a mint, kind of an off-white, the gold, purple. And then you've got your pattern paper. So this is kind of a diamond pattern in kind of a minty green color. You've got this pink piece of paper, this pattern. And the striped purple. It's got a little bit of distressing on the paper. And then this floral piece. And then this green piece. So the first card that I'm going to make, I'm going to use the striped paper and the mint green and one of the transparencies and several of the dies. And so I go ahead and take the leaf and the leaf die and cut several of those out with the mint green paper. And then I also cut a frame out using the purple striped paper. And I'm just putting the frame down on the card base, and then I'm going to mark off where basically the bottom of my base, because I'm taking this leaf die and I'm going to directly die cut that out of the front panel of the card. And to get the card to be so the leaf isn't all in one direction, I do one cut on the outside of the card, and then I open the card and do a die cut in the middle so that I have the directions going back and forth. And then, like I said, I go across all the entire bottom of the card with the leaf die, and then I go ahead and take the mint green leaves that I had cut out, and we'll insert those into each of the die cuts on the card base. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my Nuvo Deluxe adhesive and glue those into each of the die cuts. So basically there's no back on this on the front panel. I didn't put anything on the back because I do want the leaves to be on the inside of the card when you open it. So when you open the card, the leaves will be on the inside. The mint die cut portion of the leaves will be on the inside, and then you'll just be able to see through the card from the front. And so I go ahead and insert those across the bottom of the card, and then I'm going to take the transparency, the butterfly transparency, and that is going to go on the inside of the card. And so I want the sentiment on the bottom to show through, so I'm just using the oval piece from the fancy die, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that out on the front panel of the card so that when the card is closed, you'll be able to see the sentiment from the transparency on the inside of the card. And so I'm going to take the oval fancy die and cut several pieces out of the white card stock and glue those together, and that's going to go on the front of the card. So go ahead and put my acrylic block on that and set that aside to dry while I insert the transparency portion on the inside of the card. So this transparency is really actually very pretty, and I probably didn't use it to the best of to showcase it the best, but I had this idea, and so I wanted to go ahead and run with it. And this was the only sentiment that really fit somewhat well, even though you can kind of see the edges of the sentiment piece. That's what I wanted to do, so I did it. And so I'm just marking off to make sure that when after I put the adhesive on this, that it goes in the same spot. So basically I've taken the double-sided adhesive and put it behind these purple portions of the butterfly so that you can't see that when you open the card, so you can't see the adhesive. And then I'm going to take the fancy die cut and use my deluxe adhesive to go ahead and glue that down onto the front of the card, kind of to frame out the oval portion. And then I take the butterfly die and I cut 2 pieces of purple. I cut it out with 2 pieces of purple paper and 2 pieces of the white paper. And then I also take the dragonfly die and cut a piece using the gold paper. And so I'm just going to double up these butterflies and place them on the front of the card and kind of fold up the wings a little bit to get a little bit of dimension so that they're not just flat on the card. And then I take the dragonfly and I use a foam square and attach that on the bottom of the card in the leaves. And I believe that is it for this first card. Oh, nope, I add some Nuvo. What are these? These are the Jewel Drops in Pale Periwinkle, and so they dry translucent, very pretty. They have several of these translucent Jewel Drops that are just gorgeous. So that is the completed card. I think it turned out very pretty. So for the next card, I used several different pieces of paper, the gold, the mint, the green pattern paper, and then the white paper. And I'm just going to go ahead and cut strips of all these pieces. So the gold I'm cutting in fairly thin strips because those pieces are going to go in between the colored and the pattern paper. This card is really pretty simple. I have to say with this card kit, I had a little bit of trouble trying to decide what to do. Most of the time when I get them, what I usually do is I get the card kit and then I wait probably 3 or 4 days. Like I open it up and I look at it and like over the next several days I open it up and then I'll kind of look at the items and then it gives me ideas and then I think about it for a few days, jot my ideas down, and then so by the time I'm actually ready to make the video and make the cards, I have a really good idea of what I want to do. And this kit came a little bit later than usual this month. They must have been busy at Spellbinders, and so it came a little bit later than it usually does, and it kind of, I don't know if that threw me off or what. I mean, it's still, I got this kit last week and I'm just now making the video, but I've worked on it all week between work and just life, and so I don't know. I don't know if I wasn't as prepared. I just think this kit for me, I did not like the sentiment strips at all, and so I didn't end up using any of them. I think I used the arrow from the sheet on this card, but as far as the sentiments, I did not use those at all. Right now, I've gone ahead and I've put my paper on my base, and I'm just taking some of the ephemera, the leaf and the flower, and the sentiment. I think it says Shine Today. I can't see on my screen. I think it says Shine Today. And I go ahead and put that down, and then I use some of the jewels that came in the kit. And then I also take the brad from one of the sentiment flags and adhere that in the middle of the flower. And then here I take the arrow from the sentiment sheet. And I do use some clear Wink of Stella on the flower, and that's pretty much it for this card. Very simple, but you know, it doesn't have to be complicated or have a lot of stuff on it to be a pretty card. So this next card, I am using the XO die, and I'm also using the Circle Fancy die. And I've already cut out several of the circles in the gold paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and adhere the green pattern paper to the front of my card base. But what I was saying is I think this kit, for me, it just didn't have as much of, I don't know if it was as much stuff. I just, for whatever reason, I had a hard time trying to figure out ideas for this card. We'll just put it at that. I still enjoyed the kit, and I think they have some great kits. Just this one for me, it wasn't, I don't think it was as good. And I think part of that, like I said, is the sentiment strips. I didn't use at all. I didn't like the fonts. I didn't like that they were all gold. But that's just me. And I'm not going to love, I'm sure, every single kit. But I do like them all. I just don't love them all. So I've just gone ahead and I've taken the die cuts and attached each of them to each other so that they fit across the front of the card. And I've gone ahead and glued those down, and I'm going to take the flower piece with the gold accents and attach some of the foam squares and pop that up on my card. And then I take the gold leaf and attach that. Originally I was going to use the Bonjour gold sentiment for the card. I didn't end up, I think I felt like I didn't have enough space for that, and so I didn't end up using that. I just used the XO sentiment, and that, I believe that is the only writing that I have on the card. Yep. And then I dissected the butterfly and took only the acetate portion of the butterfly, which is very hard to see in pictures, but you can see it if you're actually holding the card. So for the next card, I'm going to use the oval die, the fancy oval die, and I am cutting a piece of the pink pattern paper. I'm going to use the really pretty sparkly flower with the gem in the center, and the floral piece, and the off-white piece of paper. So I go ahead and cover the card base with the floral pattern paper, and then I take one of my older Spellbinder dies and cut that out using the off-white paper and attach that directly to the card base. And then for the die cut portion, I go ahead and pop that up with several foam squares. And then I take the floral, or the flower with the gem in the center, and attach that in the center of my die cut, and go ahead and glue the love sign down, and that is it. I think this is probably one of my favorite cards out of the bunch, but it is so easy to put together. It was very quick. And as you can see, the leaves have a really pretty sparkle to them. So this card, I have mixed feelings about this card. This was probably the card that took the longest, but I am always trying to figure out how to put the ribbon, how to use the ribbon on the card, since it comes in every kit. And I'm not a huge bow person, and I tried on some of these to put a bow, and it just wasn't working for me. I did not like the way it looked. And so I just decided to make a card base with just ribbon. And so basically that's what I've done. I've kind of layered the ribbon between the sheer pieces, and there's a piece of there's white ribbon, and then there's some off-white ribbon that's a little bit thinner. And I just went ahead and layered it down the card using my double-sided foam tape. And I think it turns out sort of okay. I should have actually started layering from the bottom. It would have been a little bit easier. But as you can see, I tried to push it up under the sheer piece, and then what I end up doing is just putting the double-sided adhesive right on top of the solid ribbon, and then putting the sheer piece over that. It turned out a little bit better. So basically that's all I do, is I just layer the different colors of ribbon all the way down the card. So it was a little bit time consuming, but I think it turned out okay. It's kind of something different than what I would normally do. And I did take a clear Wink of Stella, and color the top portion of the card and the bottom where the cardstock is not covered by a ribbon, just to give it a little bit of sparkle. And actually the sheer ribbon is pretty sparkly kind of on its own. It's just got, you know, it's sheer and it has a little bit of shine. It's not a flat ribbon. But this double-sided tape really comes in handy in the kit, and I just, it's something that I love about the Spellbinders kit, is that you don't really need to have a bunch of supplies to be able to make the cards or make projects, because they give you so many things. So I go ahead and I take the wonderful sentiment that's on the transparency, and I put the foam tape behind the thicker portion of the letters so you can't see it through the card or through the transparency. And then I cut out several different dragonfly pieces, and I adhere those to the card. And I believe I popped those up with foam squares so they're a little bit dimensional. And then I added some of the jewels, and that completes this card. As you can see, the ribbon, the sheer ribbon, gives a little bit of sparkle. And again, something a little different than what I would normally do, but I actually really like how it turned out. So for this next card, I wasn't sure where I was going with it, and that kind of happens quite often. I usually jot down like how I want my layout to be, and before I make the video, but a lot of times when I'm actually making the cards in the video, they tend to go a different direction. So for this card, I'm using the oval die, and I've already adhered the green paper to my card base. And so I'm just attaching, I cut the oval die cut in half, and I'm putting a half of it on the top of the card and half of it on the bottom. And then I took the gold insert from a gold piece that I had cut out, and I just inserted that in the negative space. And then I take two of the butterflies that I hadn't dissected and adhere those down, and then I take the sentiment strip that says love and laughter, and that is it for this card. Again, another really easy card, quick card to put together. And there I am using the jewel drops again in the pale. I am having some issues with this voiceover today. Pale Periwinkle Nouveau jewel drops is what those are. And so that completes this card. I think that turned out really pretty also. I've noticed that Spellbinders has they have a love of butterflies, which I don't blame them, but it seems like they're probably in just about every kit that I've gotten so far. So for this next card, I'm going to use a small die of the month, and so I'm using cracked pistachio, distress oxide, and peacock feathers. And I've just gone ahead and smeared those on a piece of plastic. Like I said, I'm having issues with my voiceover today. Of plastic packaging. And then I just wet that down, and I'm basically just ink smushing and dragging it across the paper. This is going to be the stem portion of my flowers. And so I go ahead and I do take my heat gun and let that dry before I cut that out. And so here are the stem pieces cut out. So the next thing I'm going to do is use the flower portions of the Small Die of the Month dies. I'll use the flower dies. And I'm going to take some Canson Mixed Media paper and use watercolors. So I'm using Master's Touch watercolors. These are from Hobby Lobby, very inexpensive, and they're very pretty. They have a shine to them. So kind of a metallic shine, and so I used several of those colors, the pinks, blue, yellow, and 2 of the greens. I don't end up using all of the colors because I do just use 3 flowers in this card. And for this card I'm also going to be using the epoxy stickers, and I will be using those as the center of the flowers. So once I get done with the watercoloring, I go ahead and dry that with my heat gun and place several of the dies over the colored portions and die cut those out because I wasn't really sure which flower pieces I wanted to use, so I just went ahead and cut them all out. So with the epoxy stickers, there's a circle backing on them, and so I just removed the epoxy portion from the circle backing, and I am using those as the centers for my flowers. So I'm just doing 3 flowers. I think the metallic watercolor came out really pretty on the flowers. It just gives it a little bit of shine. And so here I'm kind of trying to decide which flowers I want to use. And I didn't want 2 pinks, or a pink and a pink, so I do end up using the blue portion. But this is just kind of a cute, easy, another easy card. So for the frame around the flowers, I'm going to do some ink smooshing again, and I'm using just my Distress ink cubes in Carved Pumpkin, Wild Honey, and Mustard Seed. So I'm going to go ahead and put those on my plastic packaging again and spritz that with water. And I'm taking a piece, I think it's just a piece of cardstock, piece of white cardstock. And again, I'm just using the same technique as I did for the flower stems, and that is ink smooshing and then dragging it across the paper. And I am going to be using a kind of a scalloped frame to cut this out. So it's a scalloped frame on the outside, and then I used a square or a rectangle die on the inside so that the outside of the frame is scalloped and the inside is just a square. So I'll go ahead and dry this and run the dies through my die cut machine. And then I go ahead and take my pencil and mark off the bottom of the frame so that I know where to place my flowers. And I do this, and then I mess it up anyhow, but so it's not totally, the end card is not totally centered on, or the frame isn't going to be totally centered on the card when I'm done with it. So I go ahead and take the stems and glue those down. I think it's because I wanted this third flower to be a little bit taller than the others, and so I moved it up, and I moved it up too far so that if I had put the frame where the pencil mark is, you would have seen a floating flower. And I probably could have just added another stem to make it a double stem instead of doing that, but I just go ahead and do that. So I adhered all the flower stems, and then I'm going to take a piece of foam tape and pop each of the flowers up. And then I'm going to take my frame and just adhere that flat to the card. So I'm just going to use my Tonic Deluxe adhesive and adhere the frame flat to the card. And this doesn't really have a sentiment as it is, and I did keep it fairly simple, but I did end up using the sentiment that says, the paper sentiment from the card kit that says smile. And then I also take some of the Carved Pumpkin Distress ink, and put that on my acrylic block, and I do some ink splattering. So for this card, I also take my white gel pen and put some dots on the petals of the middle flower and use it for the highlights on the leaves, and that will complete this card. Very pretty and simple and kind of like spring-like. So for my last card, I'm going to make a little embellishment using a paper clip and a piece of the purple pattern paper and the metal butterfly. So I'm using my handy dandy decorative scissors, which I actually really love and I don't think I use enough. It's kind of nice to get them out because I have several, and there are some nice designs that are just quick to cut paper with. So I'm going to take the pattern paper and fold it over the paper clip, and I am just taking my double-sided adhesive to secure that piece of paper. And I didn't have any small paper clips, which is what I would have preferred to use, so I end up cutting it. So it's just this little piece of paper clip. And I went ahead and I adhered the butterfly and put a gem in the center. And then I also used one of the paper leaves from the leaf die cut and attached that as well. And I am just taking this piece of floral pattern paper and attaching it to the card. And then I believe this is another Spellbinders die, which I cut out with using a piece of mint paper, and I pop that up on my card. And then I also cut out with the key die a key using the gold paper, and I'm going to attach that. This card wasn't really thought out other than the embellishment portion. I knew I wanted to do the embellishment, and the rest of the card I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with, so I kind of just put it together. And so I go ahead and use my deluxe adhesive to put on the back of the paper piece, and then I use my Fabrifix on the metal piece, or the piece of the paper clip. And I go ahead and adhere that to the card, and I also use the sentiment from the flag, and I'm using my handy dandy tool, which thank you very much for those who told me what this tool is. It's actually a rub-on tool for putting rub-ons. So instead of like the popsicle stick, this is what you use. And it's awesome for trying to adhere stuff down that you can't get to with anything else. So love the tool. So I went ahead and I used the flowers on this, and that will pretty much complete this card. I actually like how it turned out. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Give me a thumbs up if you liked it or found it informative, and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more. And thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.